Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 112 of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is Lax Out Lyme, an interview with Victoria Kotowski. My name is Richard Johannesson.
And I'm Matt Sabatello.
So, Matt, two of the things we're known for on Long Island are Lyme disease and lacrosse. And we had the pleasure of interviewing one of Long Island's top lacrosse players and one of our top coaches. And one of the things I found really frustrating about interviewing Victoria Kotowski is that despite living on Long Island, a tick endemic community, and being from a middle-class family with all the resources in the world, she was sick for 7 years before she was properly diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Rich, the most disturbing part about Coach Vic's Lyme journey is the fact that she had these classic neurological Lyme disease symptoms like chronic migraines, light and sound sensitivity, anxiety, nerve damage, body pain, yet nobody here on Long Island, New York thought Lyme disease.
So, Matt, one of the things I really enjoyed most about interviewing this young woman is she's bringing Long Island's two L's together. She is a lacrosse coach who's also bringing educational information to her lacrosse players so that they can be protected from the Lyme disease challenges that she's had to face. Hey, Vic, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how are you?
We're good, and we're really blessed to have you on the podcast. So can you share with our listeners where you're calling in from today?
Yeah, so I'm actually calling in from my apartment in Garden City on Long Island. I live here with my boyfriend. We just moved here recently. Before that, I lived in Northport, so Suffolk County. Now I'm in Nassau County, Long Island.
So have you been a Long Island gal your whole life?
My whole life. Can you tell by the accent?
I'm sure our listeners can tell by all three of our accents that we're all from Long Island. So we all have to extend an apology to the rest of the world for the way we butcher the English language here on Long Island, and we're 3 for 3. So Vic, tell us about what your childhood was like and what types of goals you set for yourself.
So I had a fabulous childhood. I grew up in Lloyd Harbor. I went to Cold Spring Harbor High School. I have 2 younger sisters. My parents are phenomenal. They've been together since they were 14, which is pretty cool. And they're like couple goals. They're just awesome people. They're my best friends. Both of them are athletes. My mom was a state champion soccer player. My dad actually played 3 sports at Brown University. He played football, lacrosse, and he wrestled. So I was pretty much born into a sports family, and that has been my passion since I was a little kid. I started playing boys lacrosse when I was in kindergarten because girls wasn't offered. I played ice hockey, soccer, field hockey, as I've said, lacrosse. It goes on and on, but sports have really been my life, and I've always pictured myself doing something in sports. So in high school, I was in a lot of journalism classes, and I was writing for the school newspaper. And then when I went to Lehigh University to play lacrosse, I was also a journalism major there. And I just pictured myself doing something in sports journalism, something like that. It's my passion. It's what makes me happy. And, you know, as you guys know, I ended up getting sick, so things turned around. But that was kind of the background of where I started. You know, great family, 2 younger sisters, very happy, sports all the time. I was a big babysitter. I babysat every teacher's kids in high school. That was kind of my big thing. That's what I was known for from the teachers is, if you need to go out and get a drink with your husband or wife, call Vic. She'll show up in a half hour. So that's kind of my background. I really, really had a great childhood, like ideal. I know that's annoying to say, but I was in a really, really good place up until I got sick.
So let's talk about that. You said that you were born to athletes. So genetically you were a gifted athlete, and I guess genetically you also had some intellectual gifts because your dad was an Ivy League educated athlete.
Yep.
So you had all of these great genetic tools, and you were living this beautiful life on Long Island, and then you started to show the symptoms of your tick disease. When did that appear, and how did those symptoms begin to affect you?
So it's so hard to pinpoint exactly, because I've had a weird medical history. Even though I've been considered maybe healthy my whole life, I've had very weird bouts of having the flu multiple times a year, in certain bouts of my life. In 5th grade, for example, and then 8th grade, I had the flu 3 times. It was bizarre. And so for the most part, though, we just kind of thought that I was just sick. And then in 2012, I was going to college. It was my freshman year, and I got so sick, I would say it's around October. I felt like I had the flu. It was really bad. I went to the doctor at school. They said it was nothing. My coaches kind of shrugged it off. They said, we need you on the fields. We have a couple fall bowl tournaments coming up. You got to suck it up. So I started to feel a little bit better after about a week. They put me on some medication. They thought maybe it was just a virus. And I believe that actually they just put me on a Z-Pack, I'm pretty sure, and said I had really bad allergies. But after a couple days, about a week, I felt a little bit better, and my symptoms for the most part went away flu-wise, and then other things started to pop up a few weeks later. And like I said, this was all my freshman year of college, so I chalked a lot of it up to, oh, it's your, big change, you're stressed, you're away from your family. But I started to get extreme anxiety and depression. Like I couldn't even, and there were times where I couldn't even show up to class because I was so nervous to walk into class. And what's so funny is, before this in high school, I was, very involved in school. I loved all of my classes. I was, an AP student. I was a high honor roll student every quarter of all 4 years of high school. So it just didn't make sense. But like I said, I kind of made excuses the entire time. So
Vic, I want to walk you back to your childhood and some of the illnesses that you were suffering during your childhood.
Yeah.
Now you're growing up on Long Island, and we know Long Island is the tip of the Lyme disease spear.
Yeah.
What did you know about ticks and Lyme disease when you were in 5th grade, or in 8th grade, and during these other times when you were showing symptoms which you now attribute to your tick disease?
Zero. It sounds, I feel so silly saying that, but I obviously knew what ticks were because my family actually had, for most of my childhood, a house out in Montauk. And that's tick central at Montauk. So my parents would always warn me about ticks, but I didn't know anything outside of that. I honestly chalked them up to, it was like a mosquito. Like you didn't want a bug to bite you, and that's so silly. But until basically I got to college, when my aunt got diagnosed with Lyme disease, was when I started to even look into it and realize that it was a disease. Like it sounds so silly for me to say, and it bugs me to no end, but it's crazy to me that there's no curriculum in schools or anything like that. I mean, I grew up in Long Island, and I can't believe that no one told me about Lyme. And it's not just my parents, they didn't know either. It's, it's crazy to me that there's not, curriculum in schools and, signs everywhere and things like that, because now that I've gotten Lyme and have been reaching out and opening up to people, I can't believe how many people have it on Long Island and have had tick bites and things like that. And, didn't know, just like me, didn't know the right, steps to take, didn't know what to do if they had a rash, didn't know what to do with the tick. So it was definitely frustrating looking back and realizing that I had no knowledge at all.
So now, Vic, do you recall having been bitten by a tick at
No.
any time during your childhood?
No. Well, I have to take that back, actually. I have been bitten by ticks before when I was much younger, but with no issue after, no bullseye or anything like that. As we know, not that that really matters, but I definitely was bitten by a tick or two when I was much, much younger, but we haven't really gone too far into that, unfortunately. I haven't really been able to figure out if maybe these things have been happening longer. I think you guys know I've only been in this for about 9 months or so. So I'm still kind of doing research. I'm still trying to learn and figure it out. And I've kind of only gotten to the point where I'm like, all right, 18 is when it seems like I really got sick. And that's kind of the stepping point I've been going off of. But the problem with Lyme, as you guys know, is I really don't know if it was from when I was 5 when I got bit by a tick, or from, a time when I was in middle school playing in the grass, playing lacrosse. So there's a lot of unknown, and that's probably one of the most frustrating things about my journey is just, I feel like I don't know my own medical journey. I feel like there's still so much confusion. So it's tough because I want to be able to just have on a piece of paper, this is what's wrong with you. This is what's going to fix you. This is what happened in the past. And I can't get that. And no Lyme patients can get that. There's just not that clarity right now, which is difficult.
So Vic, I think it's important for us to give our listeners a context here. I mean, you grew up in one of the nicest communities on Long Island, one of the wealthiest communities on Long Island. You graduated from one of the top school districts in the country.
Right.
Your parents are educated people of means, and you were an athlete. And despite playing on a number of different top-ranked athletic teams, going to one of the top school districts in the country, and certainly in New York, and being raised by two very capable people, you knew nothing about Lyme disease.
Right. I really didn't. And, what's so crazy is we know to check our dogs, like we knew our dogs had to have collars and medication, but there was not that fear for us as people, which was, which is so wild to me. And now, now that we know, and now that we're completely aware, I mean, like my parents have, they just got the backyard sprayed. We wear high socks every day. And, my dad actually got bit a couple weeks ago, and he immediately pulled it off with fine tweezers, put it in a bag, sent it off to a lab, got the full dose of doxycycline, the whole deal. But it's scary because if I didn't have Lyme, he wouldn't have done that. And my dad very possibly could have ended up in the stage that I'm in right now. And that's kind of why I've started to speak out about Lyme and things like that, is just to protect the people I love. You guys know I'm a lacrosse coach. I coach hundreds of girls in Long Island. And, I kind of just made it my mission. If the schools aren't going to teach the kids, and, if we don't have any kind of set curriculum, then I'm just going to try to do it as best I can with the circle that I have. And I'm right now, I am really trying to work with some school districts and things like that to get some curriculum in. And I have a few schools that are very interested and are willing to have me come in and talk, which is super exciting.
And that is really exciting. And I think we need to sort of explore a little bit more about, the challenges that folks are facing with Lyme disease. So you'd been bitten by ticks as a child, didn't know that there were any steps that should be taken. Your parents didn't know there were any steps that should be taken. And you had these illnesses, both when you were in 5th grade that you remember, and you were in 8th grade you remember. And I'm assuming you went to see doctors. And my question is, when you went to see the doctors, did any of the doctors here on Long Island who were treating you for those illnesses ever suggest to your parents or to you that you may be suffering from Lyme disease?
Never once. And I have been to so many doctors. I have been hospitalized. I have, been to doctors on Long Island, in Pennsylvania when I was in college. And not until this past summer of 2019 is when my orthopedist is the one that suggested it out of all of the specialists I went to, and being at hospitals and meeting great doctors. Not one person ever even mentioned the word Lyme to me.
So Vic, now let's talk about this step you took on your journey from Long Island to Lehigh University. And for those of you who are not aware of Lehigh, it's one of the top colleges in the country. And we have now an elite athlete from Long Island, leaving Long Island and now going to Pennsylvania and going to one of the top colleges in the country. And you shared with us that you were playing lacrosse for that team. And I'm assuming when you're at Lehigh, you were also in a position where you had a number of different doctors and trainers available to you because you were playing on their lacrosse team.
Yes.
When you are showing any of the symptoms that you are showing, and as they started to really develop when you were in college, did anyone, either a trainer or a doctor or any of the folks who were in charge of keeping you in your elite state, ever suggest to you that you had Lyme disease?
No, never. No, and to be honest with you, and this is a difficult part of, the sports world sometimes, what I heard, I would say 9 out of 10 times I said something was, you got to suck it up. You got to suck it up because we need you. And, I was an All-American lacrosse player. And I was a top lacrosse player coming in to my freshman year. So I know I was important to the team, but I unfortunately had a coach that really did not listen, her instincts were not right with me at all. I think she assumed that I was some lazy kid, Long Island kid that, came in and thought I was going to maybe run the show, and I didn't care. And what she didn't realize was that I cared so much, and it was crushing me that I was once, one of the fastest runners on my lacrosse team in high school. And then I showed up to Lehigh and I couldn't even run. I don't even know how to explain it, but I ended up being diagnosed with asthma, which I know now it was my air hunger. Extreme air hunger is one of my bad symptoms. But I was diagnosed with asthma because I legitimately couldn't breathe when I was running, and it was the weirdest thing. And then after that, after I couldn't breathe, the next symptom that came that was really bad and is probably one of the worst symptoms I've had is I had this extreme burning in my feet from Bartonella, one of my co-infections. And that was what ended my lacrosse career, because I was diagnosed with nerve damage in the bottom of my feet, because they just couldn't figure out what was wrong. So they just assumed it was nerve damage. I mean, I got 3 full body scans. I mean, I did a ton of MRIs, blood work, all kinds of testing, but obviously nothing Lyme specific, so nothing would come up. So they ended up just diagnosing me with nerve damage in my foot and said, you know, you're going to be in a lot of pain and it stinks. And if you want to keep playing, you can, but if you don't think you can, don't. And so hearing that, and coupled with having extreme anxiety and extreme depression at my freshman year of college, I left Lehigh. And I couldn't do it. I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't realize how sick I was. I really thought I was just a failure. It was so difficult. And then I followed up and I went to Hofstra, which you guys know is right on Long Island. I thought it'd be a safe place. It would be close to home. I was obviously having I was going through this. I kept telling my parents, I said, I'm like, I don't like how I'm growing up. I don't like how I'm maturing. I don't like who I'm becoming. And I thought it was just a natural thing. I thought that I went from being an intelligent, outgoing athlete who loved people and loved talking and, going to the beach and doing fun things. And all of a sudden I was too anxious to leave the house to go out to dinner. And I was too depressed to wake up in the morning, and I wasn't able to focus, and I was so I'll wrap it up with the best example is I started to go to Hofstra, and once I got to Hofstra, I started experiencing panic attacks, very, very bad panic attacks, to the point where I would show up to class and I would have to leave immediately because the room would start spinning and I would feel like I was going to faint and pass out. And I dropped out of Hofstra because I couldn't handle that. And I thought I was a failure then. And I thought it was just an internal thing where I couldn't figure out my own stuff. And then I started going to psychiatrists and therapists and things like that, because I really thought it was just all in my head and a huge mental block that I had. And I wanted to do anything I could to get out of it. So I started on, depression medication and anxiety medication. And I must have tried, at least 10, but none of them really made a difference. Obviously now I know, because I wasn't just depressed and I wasn't just anxious. It was a lot of bacteria in my brain and things like that going on. But it was tough. For a long time, I really thought that I was a double failure in terms of college, especially coming from a dad who was an Ivy League graduate, played 3 sports. I just thought, wow, this stinks for my parents. I'm the oldest one. I'm their oldest daughter. I was, this star kind of in high school. And now they have to deal with their daughter not even being able to figure out how to finish college. I mean, I couldn't even believe it. And it was tough. And yeah, if you guys want to hop in, I know I've been talking for a while, but
just to put this into perspective, all of these symptoms, both physical and psychological, were new. You didn't have them as a child up until your college years around 20, correct?
Yeah, I really lived a very sheltered, easy life before I was 18. I mean, I don't think I had the usual where I would get sad and I would have, I'd be anxious, but I mean, there's nothing compared to what I'm dealing with now and what I have dealt with. I mean, it really was like, and I say this to my boyfriend all the time, I feel like someone like hopped in my body and took over, like some really cranky, angry, confused, like old lady, like hopped in my body and took over, and I want her out, because it's such a internal struggle, because there's times where I can feel myself and I know, and I could talk to myself and say, hey, you're sick, you're going through stuff. The anxiety isn't real. The depression's not real. The burning in your feet is from a disease, and I try to explain all that stuff to me. But then there's other days where I wake up and I'm like, I can't even form a full normal thought because my brain is just that fogged up. So it's tough. It's every day. It's a struggle, and I'm really, really trying to get back to my normal self. And what I'm learning is I might not ever be completely back there, and I have to kind of find a new normal that works for me. But I'm also trying to find, the good stuff in this disease. And, I know I've talked a lot about the negative and feeling like a failure and stuff, but as I go on, I realize that this has helped me learn what's important. It's helped me learn, who is important. Yeah.
You have such a great attitude towards this, but there is a reason to be upset as well. I mean, it was like a switch flipped and you became a different person. And your family doctor, your primary care physician who knew you, then just said, this is just potentially a mental health problem or depression or psychological issue. And they knew you. This wasn't like a doctor who just started seeing you. And we see this time and time again. And that needs to change, especially here on Long Island, where Lyme and these other tick diseases are so prominent. And you were exhibiting the classic symptoms of Lyme disease and other tick-borne diseases, yet your doctor still just said, and going to be a little dramatic here, but it's all in your head, right? So I think we need to continue to work to raise awareness so these things don't happen to other people like they happened to you and also happened to me. So that frustration and anger can be used to raise awareness and help change things for other people to not have to go through what we went through. So that's something to, I think, focus on as well. Yeah. But can you talk to us a little bit more about, as your symptoms progressed, what were your doctors saying when these medications you were on, they kept prescribing you more and more medication and they weren't working? What were they saying was the problem then at that point?
You know what? It was the one thing I have to say is it's not completely my fault. It's also the doctor's, but it's just something I did. I didn't really stay with one doctor for a long time just because of frustration and things like that. So I didn't really have, obviously I have my primary care doctor. He knows me and that's a different story, but mainly the psychologist and things like that I was going to say. I would go to one for a couple months. They would put me on medication that wouldn't work. I would try to tell them it wasn't working. And a lot of times they would say to me, hey, you just got to be patient, or listen, this is the best medication. And if this isn't, working for you, we're going to have to figure it out, or maybe you have to go maybe you have to go to a facility at some point. I remember a doctor said that to me in 2016. He asked me if he thought a facility would be a good option for me because he diagnosed me with being bipolar. And at that time, I actually was having very, very bad suicidal thoughts, and I was very, very depressed. And he actually said to me, it's maybe you just need to be in an institution for a little bit. And that was, at that point I was like, okay, this is insane. I know myself, no matter what I'm going through and no matter how bad, my brain was fogged at the time, I knew that I wasn't depressed and I wasn't anxious naturally.
So Vic, you were sharing with us that you went to a number of different doctors who were treating you for various psychological and emotional symptoms.
Yeah.
Did you ever really believe that there was something wrong with you emotionally, or did you believe that they were just treating your symptoms and they were never really getting to the root of what was causing you to have all the problems that you were facing?
That's the struggle. And I think that now knowing Lyme, I know where the struggle comes from, just because I have bad depersonalization, and I know I've mentioned brain fog a bunch of times, but it's a bad symptom for me. It's tough for me to, I flip-flop easily. So there were many times where I would say, yeah, I have all these issues with me, and I can't believe that this happened to me. I can't believe I ended up being so depressed and so anxious. And then there were days where I'd wake up and say, there's no flipping way that this is me. There's just no way, because I would wake up and I would have those moments of clarity and I would say, there's something else here. And, I haven't really mentioned this before, but one of my worst symptoms that I also faced as well was extreme chronic fatigue. And so prior to getting sick, I was very active. I used to work out 6 times a week, usually with a trainer. I've had the same trainer, shout out to Dwayne, since I was 13. He's been really great in my Lyme journey also. I'll talk about him a little bit later. But you know, I worked out 6 days a week. As you guys know, and I've mentioned a million times, I was an athlete. And all of a sudden I was exhausted all the time. And we joke now with my parents, you know, I said how great they are and that they're the best, but you know, they did, unfortunately, and I know that they kind of kick themselves for this. They would say, oh, you're always tired. You know, oh, Vic, you're always tired now. Like, you just get up. Like, come on, like, you're always cranky. Get up. Like, and, you know, my dad and I actually had a long conversation, and we put it up on his Facebook, talking about my Lyme. But he actually said, he said, I can't believe I didn't see the signs of my own kid. And I can't believe that, you know, I think it's hard for my parents. I think it's hard for some of my friends and it's hard for myself to look back, for all of us, and just say, how did none of us realize that there was something more going on with me? How is that not clear? But, you know, it goes back to, we had no idea about Lyme disease. I never thought I was going to be a sick person in my entire life. I mean, I really was, and I'm still sometimes in denial about that I am sick, because it just is so opposite from my norm. And it's so opposite from just everything I wanted for my life. I just pictured myself in such a different place now. So it's tough, but you know, I know I answered your question a really long way, but yeah, sometimes I did see myself as depressed, and sometimes I did see myself as anxious, because it's hard not to when really smart medical professionals are telling you that.
So Vic, it sounds to me like you went back and forth between doubting that you were emotionally ill and not doubting, you know, sort of losing faith in yourself and regaining faith in yourself. And we see that as part of the sort of traditional pattern that folks go through when they're going on their diagnostic journey. And of course, in many cases, the doubt is being reinforced by doctors who don't have the capacity to properly diagnose you, right? So let's now talk about how this did impact your family, because what we've seen regularly as a pattern on our podcast is that Lyme disease, in fact, is a family disease. And you started to talk to us about how this impacted your parents sort of looking back. But let's talk about how your dad responded to you when you went from being an All-American athlete who went to one of the top colleges in the country to washing out and then having to come home. How'd your dad react to his All-American daughter washing out of her college career?
I have to say, one thing that I'm so lucky for is that, and I know a lot of Lyme patients go through this, and my heart goes out to everyone who deals with it and has to go through people in their circle kind of denying them and things like that. I have to say, my parents, although I did say, you know, they said, you know, you're always tired, suck it up. From the second they knew that I was in distress and that there was really something going on, they had my back 100%, and so did my sisters. So that was a huge thing for me, and just my mental health, just knowing that I had people that weren't telling me I was crazy, because that's kind of how I started to feel a little bit, started to feel like a crazy failure. It was tough for my parents, but like I said, they had my back. My dad, when I left Lehigh, my dad said, hey, you know, come work with me, and, you know, you and I are gonna, you know, do something awesome together. So he already had started a girls lacrosse program on Long Island. He has a ton of teams, and he brought me on as a director. So the two of us have been doing that together for 7 years. And that's been probably the thing that saved me the most in my health journey, is just having that outlet, having the kids, just having something that I can work towards and that makes me happy every day. I'm very lucky that I get to work for myself and for my dad. A lot of Lyme patients don't have that ability, and they end up having to not work and things like that. I obviously, you know, haven't really been able to work at all since I've been really, really sick starting in the summer. And my dad's been so great, and so is my mom, of course, but they've been so great with supporting me through that as well. So, you know, through leaving college twice, not being able to work, getting really sick, I mean, they've been by my side 150%, and financially as well, which has been really helpful, because Lyme is really, really grossly expensive.
So Vic, let's talk about how your symptoms developed after you left Hofstra and ultimately, what changed during your journey to ultimately get you to a diagnosis? So you go to Hofstra, you're not able to succeed at Hofstra, you leave Hofstra, and now what's happening with your symptoms?
I had a weird, from Hofstra up until now, it's like a very roller coaster time for me, because so I was really bad when I was at Hofstra. I was really anxious, and then at the same time too, I gained a very unusual amount of weight. You know, I was, like I've said before, I worked out often, but then I ended up having the nerve damage in my foot, which, you know, the burning sensation in my foot, it was so bad that I was in 2 boots and crutches for 4 months of my freshman year of college, which now I look back and I'm like, wow, I didn't have to hobble around college for 4 months. I could have just known it was Lyme. But so after I left Hofstra, I gained a bunch of weight. I was unhealthy. I was really, really depressed. And then I don't know how to really explain it. I kind of had like a light bulb moment. I started to feel okay for a little while. Like I woke up one day and I was fine. Now I know I wasn't, but in my head I thought I was fine. I had some energy and I just started working out again. I started working out with my trainer, Dwayne, who I mentioned before. He got me into a plan and I ended up getting back to myself. So I was back to like how I looked before. I was feeling good. And then I actually got a surgery, a breast reduction surgery, which then changed my entire life for the worse. So I was going uphill. I was feeling good. Things were getting better for me. And then I got this surgery. I had a bad reaction to the anesthesia. My Lyme doctors believe that's something that really triggered a lot of my symptoms. And then it was just downhill from there. I lost an extreme amount of weight to the point where I was very unhealthy. I had an extreme eating disorder. I mean, you could see all the ribs in my chest. It was sad. And besides the physical stuff, so people were telling me I looked great, which was crazy to me because I look at pictures of myself and I'm like, I don't know how anyone would say that to someone. I looked sickly. But I think it's because I was previously heavy. I was heavy and people saw me lose weight and they were like, oh my God, you look so great. And didn't realize that I was losing weight because I was so sick and I felt so terrible. So that was kind of some of the physical stuff. I ended up getting extreme joint pain, back pain, and neck pain. There was a few times where I wasn't able to move my neck for an entire day. It just stayed stiff like that. My face would start to droop in weird places. And then I think the scariest symptom that developed, I would say in about 2016, was I started fainting often. Almost every time I went from laying down to standing up. And I didn't tell anyone because I thought it was from my eating disorder. So I, was not only making myself sick from not getting the right nutrients, but then I was hiding how sick I really was because I liked how I looked, because that's how messed up my brain was at the time. So I started fainting, and then, it developed into these like mild seizures where I would be out for, 30 seconds to a minute. I would, wake up with bruises. I would wake up cut, and it was very scary. And at the time I was living alone. I was living in an apartment, and I know I heard this from your previous podcast with Sophie that you guys put out this week, but I know Sophie said she kind of hibernated in her home, and that's exactly how I felt. So I got this apartment, and it was basically a safe place for me to be sick and be miserable and have an eating disorder and faint and have seizure and do all of that in my own bubble where no one knew. And I fight myself on why I didn't tell people a lot. Sometimes I think it's because I didn't want my eating disorder to get exposed. Sometimes I think it was just because I was scared. I also didn't want my parents to have that as a kid. I know that sounds really sad, but they had me healthy, athletic, happy, involved in social life. And I didn't want them to have, me not eating, seizing on the floor and depressed. I mean, it really was, I think, for my family's sake. I just didn't want them to know how bad it was, because I was so scared, and I couldn't imagine how scary it would be for them. And especially, I'm an older sister. I have 2 younger sisters. So I always had the mindset, like, I had to be tough, and I just didn't want to scare anyone, basically. So I really did. I lived in this really sad, scary little bubble for about 3 years, I would say. I lived alone for 3 years.
So how long did you have to soldier on before you finally got a diagnosis?
I would say from when I got that reduction surgery, that was in early 2016. So from 2016 to 2019 was 3 horrible years. And what's funny is, I think anyone that's listening to this, who has known me for a long time and who has known me these last couple of years, would probably say, what is she talking about? She was fine. I was with her at the beach, or I was with her I saw her at a tournament last summer, and she was coaching, for 8 hours. But I don't think people realize, and this is why I started to speak out about it, is, I'd be at a tournament coaching for 8 hours, and kids would know that I would faint in the bathroom and then pop up, and or I would have to go in my car and take a 30-second nap, because I literally couldn't imagine taking another step. That's how exhausted my body was. But I didn't know about Lyme, and I didn't know that all of those symptoms I was having could be one thing. That was a big thing for me. So I remember telling my mom one day, a couple of years ago, I said, Mom, I think I have to go to the doctor. There's stuff going on with me. And she said, what is it? And I said, there's so much stuff I don't even know what to tell you. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, I feel like I have to go to the doctor and tell him everything's broken. And she was so shocked. And I remember my dad was shocked too, because I really didn't open up about any of this to them, besides maybe some of the mental stuff. They helped me with the mental stuff, and they helped me get to some therapists and things like that, but they had no idea. So it was definitely a scary time. But when I finally opened up to my mom and said, I think I got to figure something out. Everything's broken in my body, and I just have to be honest with you and tell you, like, stuff's going on with me. And then I finally started to open up to her, and they found out about, the eating disorder, which I think, they obviously had an idea about. They saw how I looked, and, but, I was a big liar at the time. I would pretend I would eat. I would, I lived in this bubble. And one thing I would just want to, if I can get anything across to people, it's don't take terrible things that are happening to you as fact, and don't take it as, it's something with you. I think for just a really long time, I just thought I was becoming a bad person. I just thought I was becoming like just this. And I'd say it all the time, and I have a note in my phone, and I would just say, I wish I could change. I wish I could. I went to a life coach. I just couldn't figure out why I was once great in my eyes, and now I was this 180 sick, miserable person who also, lied to their family all the time now. I would lie to my friends, about the eating disorder. I would lie to them how I was feeling. And I was doing such a disservice to myself and my health by doing that, because no one was helping me. And not only was no one helping me, but everyone was looking at me like I was myself and normal. And so, like I said in the past, my mom would say, you're always tired. You're always sick. Like, come on, get up. Like, go for another run. And my friends would say, like, how come you're not coming out? Like, you stink. Like, how could you not go out with us? And, I want to shake myself that I didn't speak out earlier because of what I was going through. But
so Vic, you finally come to grips with everything being broken. You share that with your mom, and now you're going forward to see new doctors.
Yes.
Where did you finally go to get your Lyme diagnosis, and what type of diagnosis did you get?
Yes, I didn't even get, so the very end of, actually not the middle of 2019, my knee blew up really, really badly. Like to the point where it was double the size of my right knee. It was double the size of my left knee. And I thought I tore my ACL, but, of course, this is just like my theme of life. I just decided to suck it up and just ignore it. it went away after a couple weeks, and then it came back really, really badly. I would say in July of 2019, to the point where I couldn't walk at all. Like there was no, my knee was so huge that my parents couldn't even believe it. And I said, I must have torn my ACL. And I remember my dad saying, how? Like, that doesn't make sense. And I said, well, I coach, and, you know, it must have been something like that. So we went to an orthopedist, Rich D'Agostino. He's one of the best on Long Island. He's a great guy. And he did a ton of MRIs on me, a couple x-rays. And he finally came out and said, have you ever been tested for Lyme? And I said, no. And he said, I think this might be Lyme disease. And I remember thinking, like, what do you mean this could be Lyme disease? Like my right knee is swollen. Like, how is just one knee and nothing else? And, you know, I didn't know that Lyme had all these neurological effects and things like that I was dealing with. So I thought it was silly, but I went to go get a test. The next day they called me and said it was positive, and I was, as many Lyme patients are, thrilled. I was so happy to have a diagnosis. I started to look up Lyme symptoms, and I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. This must be what has been going on with me. So I finally opened up, and I kind of told my family a little bit of what's been happening with me. I haven't even mentioned either, my wonderful boyfriend has been great as well, and he's been with me before diagnosis, post-diagnosis, so he's kind of seen, you know, the whole spiel, and he's seen me in my ups and downs, and I was finally able to open up to all of them, because, you know, even he was living, you know, a little bit in the dark, and I wasn't telling, even though we were living together, he didn't know how sick I really was, for the same reason as my parents. I didn't want my parents to have a sick daughter, and I didn't want my boyfriend to have a sick girlfriend, and I didn't want anyone to look at me differently or feel differently about me for it. So I started opening up to my parents, and we started doing some more research, and for like a couple of weeks I actually thought I was gonna like get better. I got on doxycycline. I didn't have a great reaction to that. They put me on another oral antibiotic, and I was doing okay for a little bit, and then it just got worse. It just got much worse. So I mean, it was like every symptom heightened. So the brain fog, if it was bad before, if it was a 5, it's now a 10. You know, my back pain, it was like I couldn't even sleep at night because it was so bad. I went 4 days in a row without sleep multiple times. So just basically everything got really a lot worse. So I ended up going to a Lyme literate doctor in Staten Island. He was a really great man. He put me on a midline and IV antibiotics. The problem is, though, that he was only treating my Lyme disease and had never even tested me for anything other than Lyme disease. So I was just getting sicker and sicker, and he ended up saying to me after about 4 months of treating me, I think your case is too complicated for me, and I think I have to send you to a colleague of mine, because I really think that you're in a neurological stage of this Lyme, and I think you need someone a little bit, you know, better to help fight it, which I really appreciated. And to this day, he's a really great doctor, and I couldn't, you know, I'd say enough good things about him specifically, and I really appreciate the fact that he was aware that, you know, my case was bad, and he knew I needed better help. So, you know, I didn't have the typical case of a bunch of bad Lyme doctors and things like that, because I have to say the two that I've dealt with personally you know, the two I've dealt with personally for a while, Dr. Raxlin is my current doctor. He is a superstar, and he's the one that my original doctor recommended me to, and along with some other friends in the Lyme community who I've met through Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So my current doctor has been really, really great. He had put me on another midline that wasn't doing much, so now I'm on a PICC line. I'm on 2 IV antibiotics. I also do IV glutathione. I do Myers cocktails. I'm on at least 30 different supplements. So I'm really trying to combat that, because what he basically learned from this new doctor, Dr. Excellent, I went to, was that I not only had Lyme, but I had multiple co-infections. So I come to find out the reason why I really wasn't getting much better at all originally with my first round of treatment was because I wasn't actually treating the disease that had the worst symptoms at the time. The Lyme is really bad, but like my Babesia and my Bartonella some of those symptoms have been really severe and, have led to things like seizures. So right now my path is kind of aggressively treating my co-infections and slowly treating the Lyme over time, just because that's what my doctor thinks is the best case scenario for me. And I have to say, I've had really good days where I feel good, and I've had really bad days where I don't feel good at all. I feel like nothing is working. But I can tell you that if you look at the timeline of how I've been over the last 4 or 5 months, I have been making little steps every day. So I've been climbing up the mountain a little bit. Every once in a while I'm going to slip and fall down a few pegs, but I am taking steps every day, and I feel like I am in the right, I'm with the right doctor. I feel like I'm doing the right treatment to get into remission. I know it's going to be a battle, and I know it's going to take a while, but like I said, I really do think I'm on a good path now. Originally I wasn't, because like I said, I wasn't treating the full picture. I was really attacking one part of my health issue, but not the whole thing. So now that I'm kind of treating everything, I think it's definitely making a big difference. And that's one thing I'll urge people to do who have Lyme is to make sure that you get the co-infection tests and things like that, because I got 3 Lyme tests before that just tested for Lyme. I got the IGeneX test, the ELISA, Western blot, and nothing really came up that strong for my co-infections, which was a little bit odd. And then finally, when I went to this new doctor, he did like a very extensive blood test specifically to find out what was going on with my co-infections, and it came up that I have aggressive Babesia and Bartonella.
Okay.
Sure.
So one thing that is becoming very clear from your story here is that although in the beginning they were just treating for Lyme, and then when they tested for co-infections, you weren't coming up positive, you still exhibited those symptoms. And for those that are in their journey right now and aren't getting better from treatment, would you recommend that they work with their doctor to recognize potential other tick diseases and treat clinically? Because these tests really aren't great. As you've learned, they came back negative, then you got a positive, and that may be a shortcut to help people heal quicker by identifying that the tests don't have to be positive if you have all the symptoms. Just treat the symptoms with your doctor.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. I told you guys I've had five Lyme tests. 4 out of the 5 said that I had Lyme. The best test that I got, the IGeneX test, that I had full band Lyme. So Lyme in every single band, every single one was positive. So that's, a huge issue because, I had five blood tests and every single test had a different result. So yeah, doctors have to treat clinically. They have to listen to patients and understand their symptoms because, Lyme is such a complicated, weird disease. It could hide in cyst form that can't be penetrated by certain blood tests and antibiotics. So, there needs to be more awareness that a blood test is not end all be all for Lyme. Honestly, it shouldn't even be close to a requirement. And what's sad is I know so many people in the Lyme community who are my friends who have been turned away because doctors have said, no, it says you don't have it. It says it right here. But everything else in their life shows that they have Lyme.
Another key thing that I think we can take away from your story so far is that in addition to the IV antibiotics, you're doing other things to help strengthen your body. So the antibiotics can kill good and bad, but you mentioned that you're on a lot of supplements and herbs, which are helping to restore your body and your immune system naturally as well. So do you think that's an important combination, that while you're taking the traditional antibiotics, you're also working with some supplementation and natural herbs to kind of keep your body strong so it's not going to crash post antibiotics.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was originally, my first Lyme doctor had me on only antibiotics. And I can tell you, I literally felt like my body was shutting down at times. Like I could feel my liver hurting. Like I could feel things like hurting in my body, and I felt like it was shutting down. And when this new doctor introduced supplements to me, I've learned like things like Cytoquel and CoQ10 and, Physicians Daily, just taking supplements like that give me like the little boost I need to not have a massive Herxheimer reaction. And even if I do have a Herxheimer reaction, from my antibiotics and my symptoms get really, really bad and I have a flare up, at least I know in my head that I'm taking supplements and I'm backing up my body. So when I am really sick and when I'm feeling really down and I can't get the right nutrients by eating and drinking enough water, I'm at least getting all of those supplements into my body to help fight it off. Because you can't just do one. I strongly believe you can't just do one thing in Lyme. It's too, especially with a chronic neurological stage, it is such a beast of a disease. I think you need to hit it at every cylinder you possibly can. So, I'm taking, antibiotics, as I said, IV and oral. I'm taking supplements. I talked about the glutathione and everything. I'm also, I try to meditate as much as I can. I do take acupuncture, which has been probably my favorite treatment, I would say, out of anything. It's been the thing that's helped me the most with my body pain and my sleep, which has been really huge for me. Before that, I used to think acupuncture was like a very odd thing to do. Like I was like, you stick needles in your body? Like it doesn't make sense. But learning more about the science and speaking to my acupuncturist, it's really interesting what they do, and they can really, really help Lyme patients, especially. I know, like I even go to one myself that works specifically with Lyme patients, which is very helpful. So things like that, hitting it all cylinders is really, really important. 100%.
So Vic, if you had to, for our listeners who are currently in their treatment journey, what would you recommend? You mentioned a few already. Are there any other things, maybe like CBD oil, or even something like as simple as, if they can't exercise, gentle stretches or things like that you feel have been very helpful to alleviate some of your symptoms while you're treating the Lyme and co-infections?
Right. Yeah. So CBD oil has been really, really great. That has helped with my pain. Even like the actual like lotions they have and things like that, like for my back, there's like CBD patches that you can buy. That are like similar to like the patches you just put on your back. They just obviously have CBD in it. So I've used that for my back. That's helped a lot. I've also, I've been starting to follow some chiropractors on Instagram and have been learning some stretches from them that I've been doing at home, like some stretches for my neck and things like that have been really helping. Because I really can't exercise right now. That's basically impossible for me. There's even times where walking, like, more than a half a mile is too big of a task. So just making sure I do like little things like, even small yoga moves, even being on a yoga mat and just breathing is very helpful. I know that sounds silly, but, with me especially, I think the thing that's been the hardest for me has been my brain fog. And I've mentioned that a bunch of times, but, kind of trying to meditate and get centered and, deep breathing and things like that. It was all I used to think all of that was silly before this. And I was like, I don't need any of that. But it's helped me so much in trying to reconnect with my brain and like relearn myself and remind myself who I am, because it's very easy to forget sometimes when I have, a disease kind of ravaging through it. But, just slowing down. I think the exercise is great, and making sure that you stay fit is so important, but, also making sure that you're doing stuff for your mental health. I think that's definitely the most important, at least for me. I've had some really dark times, but, being able to throw on a good podcast, even like yours, I like to, I'll sit outside on my deck, and I'll just put a yoga mat on the ground and I'll just throw on your podcast and I'll just, breathe. And it's really, really helpful to connect with other people who have Lyme and listen to their stories and things like that. But, like I said, the mental stuff I think is even more important to take care of, at least in my eyes, and the the physical and the working out and everything, just because, you know, you're living in your body, your brain is controlling you. So you got to have a good relationship with yourself. And, you know, especially when you're sick, I think it's easy to feel negative about yourself and, you know, to want to give up or to be angry. But, you know, I think I finally started to feel a little bit better when I forgave myself for being sick, as silly as that sounds, because I'm angry at myself for not knowing about Lyme and, you know, for living in a bubble for a long time. But when I finally forgave myself, and when I, you know, when I just decided that I was going to find the good in this stuff, when I'm going to find the good in the Lyme. And, you know, it's things like this, even finding podcasts like yours. And some of the people that have been on your podcast are some of my good friends now that I talk to often in the Lyme community. So there is a silver lining and things like that. I think the silver lining for me is, you know, my previous passion was coaching. That was what brought me the most joy in life. And since I can't fully do that right now, I can't be on the fields like I used to be 8 hours a day. I think my new passion is going to be coaching kids in Lyme. And, you know, teaching young kids, they're the most at risk. As you guys know, kids from, you know, around 3 to 14, I think specifically are the most at risk. And those are the kids I coach. And those are the kids I love so much. So I think, you know, that's been a big thing for me, finding a new passion and finding something that, you know, can come out of this that's really good has been helpful for me to find that silver lining.
Vic, as a fellow Lyme, I need to tell you this, and I can't emphasize this enough, that you are being way too hard on yourself. You have, I mean, hearing your story and what you've gone through never should have happened. And it's infuriating hearing what you've had to go through, but yet you're still so positive. And even just coming onto this podcast to share your story, which is you're getting so raw and vulnerable about your weakest times in your life. That's a major step forward. So helping others raise awareness is another huge thing that you're doing. So I think you need to recognize that you've come so far, spreading awareness on this podcast, helping everybody that you're training. I mean, you are literally changing the world with what you're doing. So you need to realize that. And we truly mean that, honestly. And before I hand this over to Rich, I just want to ask you one last question. And I mean, from my standpoint, you have come so far. I mean, you're speaking very well. Your brain fog is gone as far as we're concerned. You just told an amazing story and really inspired us. But how would you assess your health today?
So that's so hard. And it's kind of the theme of my life is I can't get a full grasp right now. But I would say my health is, unfortunately, I would have to say I'm only 30% back to my normal self, in my opinion. A lot of that's like the physical as well. I used to work out, as you guys know, often. Now I can't walk up the stairs. So that's like a big change for me. And, you know, I'm trying to get out of some of the mental stuff. You know, I do struggle still with anxiety. I still struggle with depression. I think a lot of people in the world do, which, you know, it's something I need to remind myself of, and I do need to be easier on myself, but I do definitely struggle with that. But I think I'm in a really good place though, even though I'm not in a good place health-wise, maybe necessarily, you know, on paper, I'm not super healthy. You know, my blood work doesn't come back great every time, you know, when I do it every week, but I'm in a good place, I think, where I'm going to start growing and I'm going to start getting better. And I feel like I'm now mentally there where I have accepted what's going on with me. I've accepted that I'm sick. It's okay. It's going to be a long battle. I think the problem with me for a while too was I was in denial. I thought that this would go away on its own. So there's been times where I would stop taking medication for weeks and I would say, I'm tougher than my meds. You know, I'll get better on my own. It's not the case. You know, I have to stop being the tough girl. And I think I've kind of just started to reach that point where I'm like, you know what? I'm sick. That's okay. I'm going to get through this in a different way than I would normally do it. And I think that's another thing too. I'm used to just everything working out, you know, that's unfortunately how my life was. I lived too easy of a life before I got sick where, you know, everything would just be okay. Everything figured itself out for me. You know, if I broke my foot, but I was, you know, put on a cast and I was fine after, 4 weeks, and I would be back on the field. So I haven't hit, I've never really hit a huge wall in my life, or, I haven't hit a huge, I guess, downward turn. And this is mine, and this is my battle. I guess I've learned, and I've been listening to other podcasts, and not just Lyme podcasts. And I've been reading other books, not just Lyme books, because for a long time I was immersed in only Lyme for a couple months, and it was making me a little bit nuts. And I've come to realize that like everyone on the planet is going to hit some kind of huge boulder in their life, where they're going to, come up to a brick wall and they're not going to know how to get around it. And I just realized that this is mine, and hopefully this is my only one. I'm praying that this is my only big issue that I'm going to have. But you know what, even if it's not, this was pretty damn tough that I'm dealing with. And if I can get through this, I think I can get through anything else that comes my way. So, just seeing that, trying to see the silver lining and trying to be as positive as I can, while also giving myself grace and allowing myself to be sad sometimes and to be sick, because that's fine. I'm coming to terms with a lot these last 9 months of being diagnosed with Lyme disease. I think, like I said to you guys, for a long time, I was like, I don't like who I am. I don't like who I'm becoming. And I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, I think I am liking now who I'm becoming. I think I'm going to do something good with this. And I think maybe I got Lyme for a reason, as weird as that sounds. I think maybe I was the perfect person to get it, because I know I'll go into remission at some point. I know I'm going to beat it. And then I know I'm going to protect a bunch of kids from getting it.
So Vic, let's talk about that. You are already, despite being in the throes of your Lyme disease battle, reaching out to other folks, and you're doing a couple of things that I think are really unbelievable. The first thing is that your Instagram is really just a really beautiful testament to the challenges that you're facing, and you're trying to reach out to other folks and help them through their journey as you're going through yours. And the second thing that I think is really beautiful is your Lax Out Lyme program that you started. And I watched a number of different young people put together videos where they are trying to share Lyme disease awareness through this program that you started, where they're using their lacrosse sticks and a lime and making a little statement about Lyme disease. So can you please talk about first what inspired your Instagram, and then ultimately what inspired the Lax Out Lyme program that you started?
Yeah, so actually it's funny. What inspired my Instagram was I wasn't I'm a pretty private person for the most part. I bet people listening to this in a couple of weeks are going to be shocked at some of the things that I said, and just my health in general, because I don't think a lot of people know. But back in the fall, I really wasn't going to share my Lyme journey at all. And then I ended up having, one of my players was having a hard time with her mental health, and she was just having a really tough time, and she was feeling low. And I remember I said to her, I said, listen, like, I have really bad days too. Like I have depression too, and I have anxiety. You're not alone. And she said, Coach Vic, no, you're not. Like, you're always so happy and you're fine. Like and she said it like to a point where I was like, wow, am I like lying to everyone and doing a disservice to these kids by making my life seem perfect on the internet? Because, I let all of them follow me and things like that. I'm Coach Vic, and I really thought to myself, am I doing disservice to them and myself? Because the other thing was I showed up to a tournament after I got diagnosed, before things were really bad, but I was still pretty sick. And I showed up to a tournament and everyone was like, oh my God, you look so great. Like, it's so nice to see you. You're going to crush Lyme. Like, I hope you're fine by the summer and things like that. And everyone, I was like, wow, people really don't get it. And people really don't get that this isn't like a flu, and this isn't like, it's not like, I hope you get better soon. This is a tough health battle that I'm facing could be, for my life, So I finally just started to post on my Instagram and, let people know what's going on with me. And I tried to be as open and honest as possible. For that sake, so people don't know that my life is perfect for their own self. So, they don't feel like I'm, gallivanting around. I'm on the, just because I post a picture on the beach doesn't mean that I wasn't sleeping on the beach the entire time I was there, because, you know, I have light sensitivity. And that's what people don't understand. So I started posting that. I started reaching out to my players. I ended up, you know, reaching out to a bunch of people on Facebook. I joined a bunch of groups. And what's kind of cool is from that, I have found a huge community of Lymies who are awesome and who have helped me a lot, and who I feel like maybe I've helped a little bit as well. So I actually, I have friends from Canada now. I have friends from Spain. I have a good friend who I talk to every day from Ireland who actually was just diagnosed last week with Lyme. She reached out to me because she found my Instagram and she saw that we had similar symptoms, and she didn't know what was wrong with her at the time. So what's kind of cool is we've been talking for a couple months now, is I was able to be with her on her journey and, you know, send her what blood tests to, you know, make sure to get and things like that. And she was just, she just got a proper diagnosis and she starts treatment on Monday. So, you know, I've gotten to meet really, really awesome people. I just joined the Global Lyme Alliance as an ambassador. So I've been doing some fun stuff with them. The Lax Out Lyme, which you mentioned, has been really, really fun. Basically, I've just been getting my lacrosse players, similar to the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, to do a little stick trick with the Lyme, say a Lyme fact, which I told them they had to look up on their own so they could hopefully learn some stuff instead of me just handing them some facts. And then they have to tag some friends. So it's just been a good way to, you know, especially that age, it's tough for them. I don't know how many of my 14-year-olds are going to sit and listen to a Lyme podcast, but I know that they're going to look at all of their friends posting on social media about Lyme and little facts about Lyme. And even if it makes one kid, it clicks with them and goes, oh, I got to watch out for ticks. It's worth it. And we've actually been able to raise like almost $2,000 so far, which has been great. So that's going to go towards Lyme disease research and things like that. So that's kind of my social media spiel. My dad and I also went on, my dad does a weekly webcast basically on Facebook Live where he interviews different athletes, just, you know, just like a fun thing, especially when quarantine started. He was like, we need our sports fix. And he had me as a special guest one day, and we talked about Lyme for about like a half hour, and I was able to give a little bit of my story. And what's nice is from there, actually, we've had about 4 or 5 people reach out to us since that video and said, oh, we found a tick on us, and we sent it into a clinic because of what you said on the video. So it is nice to actually get feedback that some of the stuff I'm posting is making at least even a tiny difference. I mean, like I said, even if I can help one person, it's definitely worth it, because this disease is hell. And I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I definitely wouldn't wish it on any of my sweet angel little lacrosse players who I love more than anything. I mean, I can't imagine one of them getting it. So I really am going to, as annoying as it is for some people, some of my friends who are 26 and they're like, stop posting about Lyme on Instagram and shut up. I'm like, no, I'm going to post it until someone finds a tick on them, or, you know, or sprays their house who wasn't originally going to, or gets their dog a collar who didn't have a collar. I'm going to do it until I get as many people aware of what's going on as possible. Because it's a pandemic. The Lyme is a pandemic, 100%. So there needs to be more done. It's very frustrating as a Limey to see what's going on.
That's a perfect transition to our last question, Coach Vic, and that is, if one of your 14-year-old players came up to you and said, hey, Coach Vic, I have a tick biting me on my leg, what would you recommend that she do so that she wouldn't have to go through the terrible journey that you suffered?
Right. Well, the first thing is, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about how to get the tick out in general. You have to pull the tick straight out. Don't twist it. I've heard so many people say twisting it, and drives me crazy. You have to try to make sure you get the full tick out by just pulling it straight out. Put that tick in a Ziploc bag and send it to a lab. I highly recommend that. I think a lot of people want to like throw the tick out or burn it or flush it or do whatever they do. Try to keep it and try to keep it in a bag, because you'll have that peace of mind at least once it gets tested. The next thing they have to do is immediately call their doctor and get the maximum dosage of doxycycline. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if I did in the podcast when I was talking to you guys, but my dad was bit twice already in May by ticks. And his doctor originally just wanted to give him 2 pills of doxycycline. And the problem is, there's not even enough research that says that the full dosage of doxycycline will fully kill a Lyme infection. So, for some doctors who are prescribing not even the full dosage and 2 pills or a week, I mean, it's so frustrating because you literally have someone that has the ability to not live this life, and we're not giving them every chance possible to not do it. And it's medication. You take it, take all 28, 30 days if you can. And then make sure you monitor your symptoms. That was one thing I really wish I did. And I look back and I kick myself that I didn't have a journal. Now I do. And I try to journal my symptoms and my eating and things like that. But I really wish I had some kind of journal where I was actually writing down what's going on with me, what are my symptoms, how am I feeling, did I eat anything that might have thrown me off, how did I sleep. I think, to be honest with you, people should have a health journal no matter what, whether you're healthy or not healthy. I think it's just a really good thing because, if I kept a health journal before I was 18, before I got really, really sick, I would have been able to kind of piece together the puzzle a lot quicker than, 8 years or however long it took me. So that would be my recommendation, definitely, is, doxycycline, full dosage, get the tick out, send it, and try to journal as much as you can. Be aware, especially for parents too. And, for me as a coach, one thing I've been doing is I've been also reaching out to coaches on Long Island and emailing coaches to tell them some of the signs to look for. Because I know for me as a coach, like, I wish maybe my college coaches had an idea about Lyme and maybe something would have gone off in their head. So if I can at least get all of these people who are in charge of these kids every day, seeing them sometimes more than their own parents do, if I could get, them involved and them aware of, what Lyme is, how to prevent it, making sure their fields are sprayed, as much as possible and things like that. I think that's a big step that we can take too, is making sure our educators, our coaches, our parents, the people that are actually taking care of the kids and watching kids, make sure they're fully aware, because I think that's a huge step. And then in turn, the kids will teach their kids.
Thank you for listening to the Tick Bootcamp interview with Coach Victoria Kotowski. To our listeners, we have a call to action. If you'd like to learn more about Coach Vic and her Lyme disease journey, please visit our Instagram page at Vic Kotowski. Second, if you enjoyed this episode of the Tick Bootcamp podcast, please share it with your friends by using the social media buttons you see at the bottom of our post. Third, Tick Bootcamp has created a Tick Bite blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been shared with us by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at www.tickbootcamp.com to view the blueprint. Please note we would appreciate any input or improvements you would like to share. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify to get your automatic episode updates of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. And finally, please take a minute to leave us a review on iTunes or on our website. Thank you for listening.